Then Sir Launcelot departed and rode westerly, and there he sought 7 or 8 days. And at the last he came to a nunnery, and then was Queen Guinevere ware of Sir Launcelot as he walked in the cloister. And when she saw him there, she swooned thrice, that all the ladies and gentlewomen had work enough to hold the queen up. So when she might speak, she called ladies and gentlewomen to her, and said, Ye marvel, fair ladies, why I make this fair. Truly, she said, it is for the sight of yonder knight that yonder standeth. Wherefore I pray you all, call him to me. When Sir Launcelot was brought to her, then she said to all the ladies, Through this man and me hath all this war been wrought, and the death of the most noblest knights of the world. For through our love that we have loved together is my most noble lord slain. Therefore, Sir Launcelot, wit thou well I am set in such a plight to get my soul heal, and yet I trust through God's grace that after my death to have a sight of the blessed face of Christ, and at doomsday to sit on his right side. For as sinful as ever I was are saints in heaven. Therefore, Sir Launcelot, I require thee and beseech thee heartily for all the love that ever was betwixt us, that thou never see me more in the visage. I command thee on God's behalf that thou forsake my company, and to thy kingdom thou turn again, and keep well thy realm from war and wrack. For as well as I have loved thee, mine heart will not serve me to see thee. For through thee and me is the flower of kings and knights destroyed. Therefore, Sir Launcelot, go to thy realm, and there take thee a wife, and live with her with joy and bliss. And I pray thee heartily, pray for me to our Lord, that I may amend my misliving. Now, sweet madam, said Sir Launcelot, would ye that I should now return again unto my country, and there to wed a lady? Nay, madam, wit you well, that shall I never do, for I shall never be so false to you, of that I have promised. But the same destiny that ye have taken you to, I will take me unto, for to please Jesu, and ever for you I cast me specially to pray. If thou wilt do so, said the queen, hold thy promise, but I may never believe but that thou wilt turn to the world again. Well, madam, said he, ye say as pleaseth you, yet wist you me never false of my promise, and God defend but I should forsake the world as ye have done. For in the quest of the Sangreal I had forsaken the vanities of the world, had not your Lord been. And if I had done so at that time with my heart, will, and thought, I had passed all the knights that were in the Sangreal, except Sir Galahad, my son. And therefore, lady, sithen ye have taken you to perfection, I must needs take me to perfection of right. For I take record of God, in you I have had mine earthly joy, and if I had found you now so disposed, I had cast to have had you into mine own realm. But sithen I find you thus disposed, I ensure you faithfully I will ever take me to penance, and pray while my life lasteth, if I may find any hermit, either grey or white, that will receive me. Wherefore, madam, I pray you kiss me, and never no more. Nay, said the queen, that shall I never do, but abstain you from such works. And they departed. For there was never so hard-hearted man, but he would have wept to see the dolour that they made. For there was lamentation as they had been stung with spears, and many times they swooned, and the ladies bare the queen to her chamber. And Sir Launcelot awoke, and went and took his horse, and rode all that day and all night in a forest, weeping.
In the mean season, while the king sat at dinner, who did eat but little, his heart was so full that he had no lust to eat. All the country about the castle was full of men of war. They within the castle might see them out at the windows, and the king, when he rose from the table, might see them himself. Then he demanded of his cousin what men they were that appeared so many in the fields. The earl answered and said, The most part of them be Londoners. What would they have? Quoth the king. They will have you, quoth the earl, and bring you to London and put you in the Tower. There is none other remedy. He can scape none otherwise. No, quoth the king, and he was sore afraid of those words, for he knew well that the Londoners loved him not, and said, Cousin, can you not provide for my surety? I will not gladly put me into their hands, for I know well that they hate me, and have done long, though I be their king. Then the earl said, Sir, I see none other remedy but to yield yourself as my prisoner, and when they know that ye be my prisoner, they will do you no hurt. But ye must so ordain you and your company to ride to London with me, and to be as my prisoner in the Tower of London. The king, who saw himself in a hard case, all his spirits were sore abashed, as that he doubted greatly that the Londoners would slay him. Then he yielded himself prisoner to the Earl of Derby, and bound himself, and promised to do all that he would have him to do. In likewise all other knights, squires, and officers yielded to the earl, to eschew the danger and peril that they were in. And the earl then received them as his prisoners, and ordained incontinent horses to be saddled and brought forth into the court, and the gates opened. Then many men of arms and archers entered. Then the Earl of Derby caused a cry to be made, on pain of death, no man to be so hardy to take away anything within the castle, nor to lay any hands upon any person, for all were under the earl's safeguard and protection. Which cry was kept. No man durst break it. The earl had the king down into the court talking together, and caused all the king's whole household and estate to go forward as of custom they had done before, without changing or minishing of anything. While everything was a-preparing, the king and the earl communed together in the court, and were well regarded by the Londoners. And as it was informed me, King Richard had a greyhound called Marth, who always waited upon the king, and would know no man else. For whensoever the king did ride, he that kept the greyhound did let him loose, and he would straight run to the king, and fawn upon him, and leap with his 4 feet upon the king's shoulders. And as the king and the Earl of Derby talked together in the court, the greyhound, who was wont to leap upon the king, left the king, and came to the Earl of Derby, Duke of Lancaster, and made to him the same friendly countenance and cheer as he was wont to do to the king. The Duke, who knew not the greyhound, demanded of the king what the greyhound would do. Cousin, quoth the king, it is a great good token to you, and an evil sign to me. Sir, how know you that? Quoth the Duke. I know it well, quoth the king. The greyhound maketh you cheer this day as King of England, as ye shall be, and I shall be deposed. The greyhound hath this knowledge naturally. Therefore take him to you, he will follow you and forsake me. The Duke understood well those words, and cherished the greyhound, who would never after follow King Richard, but followed the Duke of Lancaster.
But now again to the conversation of the citizens among themselves. The eldest ruleth the family. The wives be ministers to their husbands, the children to their parents, and to be short, the younger to their elders. Every city is divided into 4 equal parts. In the middle of every quarter there is a marketplace of all manner of things. Thither the works of every family be brought in to certain houses, and every kind of thing is laid up several in barns or storehouses. From hence the father of every family, or every householder, fetcheth whatsoever he and his have need of, and carrieth it away with him without money, without exchange, without any gage or pledge. For why should anything be denied unto him, seeing there is abundance of all things, and that it is not to be feared lest any man will ask more than he needeth? For why should it be thought that that man would ask more than enough, which is sure never to lack? Certainly in all kinds of living creatures, either fear of lack doth cause covetousness and ravin, or in man only pride, which counteth it a glorious thing to pass and excel others in the superfluous and vain ostentation of things, the which kind of vice among the Utopians can have no place. Moreover, every street hath certain great large halls, where dwell the Syphogrants, and to every one of the same halls be appointed 30 families, of either side 15. The stewards of every hall at a certain hour come into the meat markets, where they receive meat according to the number of their halls. To these halls at the set hours of dinner and supper cometh all the whole Syphogrante, or ward, warned by the noise of a brazen trumpet, except such as be sick in the hospitals, or else in their own houses. Howbeit, no man is prohibited or forbid, after the halls be served, to fetch home meat out of the market to his own house. For they know that no man will do it without a cause reasonable. For though no man be prohibited to dine at home, yet no man doth it willingly, because it is counted a point of small honesty. And also it were folly to take the pain to dress a bad dinner at home, when they may be welcome to good and fine fare so nigh hand at the hall. In this hall all vile service, all slavery and drudgery, with all laboursome toil and business, is done by bondmen. But the women of every family, by course, have the office and charge of cookery, for seething and dressing the meat, and ordering all things thereto belonging. They sit at 3 tables or more, according to the number of their company. The men sit upon the bench next the wall, and the women against them on the other side of the table, that if any sudden evil should chance to them, as many times happeneth to women with child, they may rise without trouble or disturbance of anybody, and go thence into the nursery. The nurses sit several alone with their young sucklings in a certain parlour appointed and deputed to the same purpose, never without fire and clean water, nor yet without cradles, that when they will, they may lay down the young infants, and at their pleasure take them out of their swathing clothes, and hold them to the fire, and refresh them with play. Every mother is nurse to her own child, unless either death or sickness be the let. When that chanceth, the wives of the Syphogrants quickly provide a nurse, and that is not hard to be done, for they that can do it do proffer themselves to no service so gladly as that, because that there this kind of pity is much praised, and the child that is nourished ever after taketh his nurse for his own natural mother.
A report of the voyage and success thereof, attempted in the year of our Lord 1583 by Sir Humphrey Gilbert, Knight, with other gentlemen assisting him in that action, intended to discover and to plant Christian inhabitants in place convenient upon those large and ample countries extended northward from the Cape of Florida, lying under very temperate climes, esteemed fertile and rich in minerals, yet not in the actual possession of any Christian prince. Written by Mr. Edward Hayes, gentleman, and principal actor in the same voyage, who alone continued unto the end, and by God's special assistance returned home with his retinue safe and entire. Leaving the issue of this good hope unto God, who knoweth the truth only, and can at his good pleasure bring the same to light, I will hasten to the end of this tragedy, which must be knit up in the person of our general. And as it was God's ordinance upon him, even so the vehement persuasion and entreaty of his friends could nothing avail to divert him of a wilful resolution of going through in his frigate, which was overcharged upon the decks with fights, nettings, and small artillery, too cumbersome for so small a boat, that was to pass through the ocean sea at that season of the year, when by course we might expect much storm of foul weather, whereof indeed we had enough. But when he was entreated by the captain, master, and other his well-willers of the Hind, not to venture in the frigate, this was his answer: I will not forsake my little company going homeward, with whom I have passed so many storms and perils. And in very truth, he was urged to be so over-hard by hard reports given of him that he was afraid of the sea, albeit this was rather rashness than advised resolution, to prefer the wind of a vain report to the weight of his own life. Seeing he would not bend to reason, he had provision out of the Hind, such as was wanting aboard his frigate, and so we committed him to God's protection, and set him aboard his pinnace, we being more than 300 leagues onward of our way home. By that time we had brought the islands of Azores south of us, yet we then keeping much to the north, until we had got into the height and elevation of England, we met with very foul weather and terrible seas, breaking short and high, pyramid-wise. The reason whereof seemed to proceed either of hilly grounds, high and low within the sea, as we see hills and vales upon the land, upon which the seas do mount and fall, or else the cause proceedeth of diversity of winds, shifting often in sundry points, all which having power to move the great ocean, which again is not presently settled, so many seas do encounter together, as there had been diversity of winds. Howsoever it cometh to pass, men which all their lifetime had occupied the sea, never saw more outrageous seas. We had also upon our mainyard an apparition of a little fire by night, which seamen do call Castor and Pollux, but we had only one, which they take an evil sign of more tempest. The same is usual in storms. Monday the 9th of September, in the afternoon, the frigate was near cast away, oppressed by waves, yet at that time recovered, and giving forth signs of joy, the general, sitting abaft with a book in his hand, cried out to us in the Hind, so oft as we did approach within hearing, We are as near to heaven by sea as by land, reiterating the same speech, well beseeming a soldier resolute in Jesus Christ, as I can testify he was. The same Monday night, about 12 of the clock, or not long after, the frigate being ahead of us in the Golden Hind, suddenly her lights were out, whereof as it were in a moment we had lost the sight, and with all our watch cried, The general was cast away, which was too true. For in that moment the frigate was devoured and swallowed up of the sea. Yet still we looked out all that night, and ever after, until we arrived upon the coast of England.
The manner how he fell in love with her was this. Antonius, going to make war with the Parthians, sent to command Cleopatra to appear personally before him when he came into Cilicia, to answer unto such accusations as were laid against her, being this, that she had aided Cassius and Brutus in their war against him. The messenger sent unto Cleopatra to make this summons unto her was called Dellius, whom when he had thoroughly considered her beauty, the excellent grace and sweetness of her tongue, he nothing mistrusted that Antonius would do any hurt to so noble a lady, but rather assured himself that within few days she should be in great favour with him. Thereupon he did her great honour, and persuaded her to come into Cilicia as honourably furnished as she could possible, and bade her not to be afraid at all of Antonius, for he was a more courteous lord than any she had ever seen. Cleopatra, on the other side, believing Dellius's words, and guessing by the former access and credit she had with Julius Caesar and Cnaeus Pompey, the son of Pompey the Great, only for her beauty, she began to have good hope that she might more easily win Antonius. For Caesar and Pompey knew her when she was but a young thing, and knew not then what the world meant. But now she went to Antonius, at the age when a woman's beauty is at the prime, and she also of best judgment. So she furnished herself with a world of gifts, store of gold and silver, and of riches and other sumptuous ornaments, as is credible enough she might bring from so great a house, and from so wealthy and rich a realm as Egypt was. But yet she carried nothing with her wherein she trusted more than in herself, and in the charms and enchantment of her passing beauty and grace. Therefore, when she was sent unto by divers letters, both from Antonius himself and also from his friends, she made so light of it, and mocked Antonius so much, that she disdained to set forward otherwise, but to take her barge in the river of Cydnus, the poop whereof was of gold, the sails of purple, and the oars of silver, which kept stroke in rowing after the sound of the music of flutes, hautboys, cithens, viols, and such other instruments as they played upon the barge. And now for the person of herself. She was laid under a pavilion of cloth of gold of tissue, apparelled and attired like the goddess Venus commonly drawn in picture, and hard by her, on either hand of her, pretty fair boys apparelled as painters do set forth God Cupid, with little fans in their hands, with the which they fanned wind upon her. Her ladies and gentlewomen also, the fairest of them, were apparelled like the nymphs Nereids, which are the mermaids of the waters, and like the Graces, some steering the helm, others tending the tackle and ropes of the barge, out of which there came a wonderful passing sweet savour of perfumes, that perfumed the wharf's side, pestered with innumerable multitudes of people. Some of them followed the barge all alongst the riverside, others also ran out of the city to see her coming in. So that in the end there ran such multitudes of people one after another to see her, that Antonius was left post alone in the marketplace in his imperial seat to give audience. And there went a rumour in the people's mouths that the goddess Venus was come to play with the god Bacchus for the general good of all Asia.
Now therein of all sciences is our poet the monarch. For he doth not only show the way, but giveth so sweet a prospect into the way, as will entice any man to enter into it. Nay, he doth, as if your journey should lie through a fair vineyard, at the first give you a cluster of grapes, that full of their taste you may long to pass further. He beginneth not with obscure definitions, which must blur the margent with interpretations, and load the memory with doubtfulness. But he cometh to you with words set in delightful proportion, either accompanied with, or prepared for, the well enchanting skill of music. And with a tale, forsooth, he cometh unto you, with a tale which holdeth children from play, and old men from the chimney corner. So that, sith the ever praiseworthy poesy is full of virtue-breeding delightfulness, and void of no gift that ought to be in the noble name of learning, sith the blames laid against it are either false or feeble, sith the cause why it is not esteemed in England is the fault of poet-apes, not poets, sith lastly our tongue is most fit to honour poesy, and to be honoured by poesy, I conjure you all that have had the evil luck to read this ink-wasting toy of mine, even in the name of the 9 Muses, no more to scorn the sacred mysteries of poesies, no more to laugh at the name of poets as though they were next inheritors to fools, no more to jest at the reverent title of a rhymer, but to believe, with Aristotle, that they were the ancient treasurers of the Grecians' divinity, to believe with Bembus that they were first bringers in of all civility, to believe with Scaliger that no philosopher's precepts can sooner make you an honest man than the reading of Virgil, to believe with Clausurus, the translator of Cornutus, that it pleased the heavenly deity by Hesiod and Homer under the veil of fables, to give us all knowledge, logic, rhetoric, philosophy natural and moral, and quid non. To believe with me that there are many mysteries contained in poetry which of purpose were written darkly, lest by profane wits it should be abused. To believe with Landin that they are so beloved of the gods that whatsoever they write proceeds of a divine fury. Lastly, to believe themselves when they tell you they will make you immortal by their verses. Thus doing, your name shall flourish in the printers' shops. Thus doing, you shall be of kin to many a poetical preface. Thus doing, you shall be most fair, most rich, most wise, most all. You shall dwell upon superlatives. Thus doing, though you be libertino patrinatus, you shall suddenly grow Herculia proles, si quid mea carmina passant. Thus doing, your soul shall be placed with Dante's Beatrix or Virgil's Anchises. But if, fie of such a but, you be born so near the dull-making cataphract of Nilus that you cannot hear the planet-like music of poetry, if you have so earth-creeping a mind that it cannot lift itself up to look to the sky of poetry, or rather, by a certain rustical disdain, will become such a mome as to be a momus of poetry, then, though I will not wish unto you the ass's ears of Midas, nor to be driven by a poet's verses, as Bubonax was, to hang himself, nor to be rhymed to death, as is said to be done in Ireland, yet thus much curse I must send you in the behalf of all poets, that while you live in love, and never get favour for lacking skill of a sonnet. And when you die, your memory die from the earth for want of an epitaph.
It happened that these English gentlemen conducted these two strangers to a place where divers gentlewomen were, some courtiers, others of the country, where, being welcome, they frequented almost every day for the space of 1 month, entertaining of time in courtly pastimes, though not in the court, insomuch that if they came not, they were sent for, and so used as they had been countrymen, not strangers. Philotas, with this continual access and often conference with gentlewomen, began to wean himself from the counsel of Euphues, and to wed his eyes to the comeliness of ladies, yet so warily as neither his friend could by narrow watching discover it, neither did he by any wanton countenance bewray it, but carrying the image of love engraven in the bottom of his heart, and the picture of courtesy imprinted in his face, he was thought to Euphues courtly, and known to himself comfortless. Among a number of ladies, he fixed his eyes upon one whose countenance seemed to promise mercy and threaten mischief, intermeddling a desire of liking with a disdain of love, showing herself in courtesy to be familiar with all, and with a certain comely pride to accept none, whose wit would commonly taunt without despite, but not without disport, as one that seemed to abhor love worse than lust, and lust worse than murder, of greater beauty than birth, and yet of less beauty than honesty, which got her more honour by virtue than nature could by art, or fortune might by promotion. She was ready of answer, yet wary, shrill of speech, yet sweet, in all her passions so temperate, as in her greatest mirth none would think her wanton, neither in her deepest grief solemn, but always to look with so sober cheerfulness, as it was hardly thought whether she were more commended for her gravity of the aged, or for her courtliness of the youth. Oftentimes delighted to hear discourses of love, but ever desirous to be instructed in learning, somewhat curious to keep her beauty, which made her comely, but more careful to increase her credit, which made her commendable, not adding the length of a hair to courtliness that might detract the breadth of a hair from chastity. In all her talk so pleasant, in all her looks so amiable, so grave modesty joined with so witty mirth, that they that were entangled with her beauty were enforced to prefer her wit before their wills, and they that loved her virtue were compelled to prefer their affections before her wisdom, whose rare qualities caused so strange events that the wise were allured to vanity and the wantons to virtue, much like the river in Arabia, which turneth gold to dross and dirt to silver. In conclusion, there wanted nothing in this English angel that nature might add for perfection, or fortune could give for wealth, or God doth commonly bestow on mortal creatures. And more easy it is in the description of so rare a personage to imagine what she had not than to repeat all she had. But such a one she was, as almost they all are that serve so noble a prince. Such virgins carry lights before such a Vesta, such nymphs arrows with such a Diana.
A pretty, round-faced wench was it, with black eyebrows, a high forehead, a little mouth, and a sharp nose, as fat and plumb every part of her as a plover, a skin as sleek and soft as the back of a swan. It doth me good when I remember her. Like a bird she tripped on the ground, and bare out her belly as majestical as an ostrich, with a liquorous rolling eye fixed piercing on the earth, and sometimes scornfully darted on the one side, she figured forth a high, discontented disdain, much like a prince puffing and storming at the treason of some mighty subject fled lately out of his power. Her very countenance, repiningly wrathful, and yet clear and unwrinkled, would have confirmed the clearness of her conscience to the austerest judge in the world. If in anything she were culpable, it was in being too melancholy chaste, and showing herself as covetous of her beauty as her husband was of his bags. Many are honest, because they know not how to be dishonest. She thought there was no pleasure in stolen bread, because there was no pleasure in an old man's bed. It is almost impossible that any woman should be excellently witty and not make the utmost penny of her beauty. This age and this country of ours admits of some miraculous exceptions, but former times are my constant informers. Those that have quick motions of wit have quick motions in everything. Iron only needs many strokes. Only iron wits are not won without a long siege of entreaty. Gold easily bends. The most ingenious minds are easiest moved. Ingenium nobis molle thalia dedit, saith Sappho to Phao. Who hath no merciful, mild mistress, I will maintain, hath no witty, but a clownish, dull, phlegmatic puppy to his mistress. This Magnifico's wife was a good, loving soul, that had metal enough in her to make a good wit of, but being never removed from under her mother's and her husband's wing, it was not moulded and fashioned as it ought. Causeless distrust is able to drive deceit into a simple woman's head. I durst pawn the credit of a page, which is worth Ames' ace at all times, that she was immaculate honest, till she met with us in prison. Marry, what temptations she had then, when fire and flax were put together, conceit with yourselves. But hold my master excusable. Alack, he was too virtuous to make her vicious. He stood upon religion and conscience. What a heinous thing it was to subvert God's ordinance. This was all the injury he would offer her. Sometimes he would imagine her in a melancholy humour to be his Geraldine, and court her in terms correspondent. Nay, he would swear she was his Geraldine, and take her white hand, and wipe his eyes with it, as though the very touch of her might staunch his anguish. Now would he kneel, and kiss the ground as holy ground, which she vouchsafed to bless from barrenness by her steps. Who would have learned to write an excellent passion, might have been a perfect tragic poet, had he but attended half the extremity of his lament. My master beat the bush, and kept a coil and a prattling, but I caught the bird. Simplicity and plainness shall carry it away in another world. God wot he was petro desperato, when I, stepping to her with a Dunstable tale, made up my market. A holy requiem to their souls that think to woo a woman with riddles. I had some cunning plot, you must suppose, to bring this about. Her husband had abused her, and it was very necessary she should be revenged. Seldom do they prove patient martyrs who are punished unjustly. One way or other they will cry quittance, whatsoever it cost them. No other apt means had this poor she, captived Sicily, to work her hoddy-peak husband a proportionable plague for his jealousy, but to give his head his full loading of infamy. She thought she would make him complain for something that now was so hard bound with an heretical opinion. How I dealt with her, guess, gentle reader, sub audi, that I was in prison, and she my silly jailer.
"What is truth?" said jesting Pilate, and would not stay for an answer. "Certainly there be that delight in giddiness, and count it a bondage to fix a belief, affecting free will in thinking as well as in acting. And though the sects of philosophers of that kind be gone, yet there remain certain discoursing wits which are of the same veins, though there be not so much blood in them as was in those of the ancients. But it is not only the difficulty and labour which men take in finding out of truth, nor again that when it is found it imposeth upon men's thoughts, that doth bring lies in favour, but a natural though corrupt love of the lie itself. One of the later school of the Grecians examineth the matter, and is at a stand to think what should be in it, that men should love lies, where neither they make for pleasure, as with poets, nor for advantage, as with the merchant, but for the lie's sake. But I cannot tell. This same truth is a naked and open daylight, that doth not show the masks and mummeries and triumphs of the world half so stately and daintily as candle lights. Truth may perhaps come to the price of a pearl that showeth best by day, but it will not rise to the price of a diamond or carbuncle that showeth best in varied lights. A mixture of a lie doth ever add pleasure. Doth any man doubt that if there were taken out of men's minds vain opinions, flattering hopes, false valuations, imaginations as one would, and the like, but it would leave the minds of a number of men poor, shrunken things, full of melancholy and indisposition, and unpleasing to themselves? One of the fathers, in great severity, called poesy vinum daemonum, because it filleth the imagination, and yet it is but with the shadow of a lie. But it is not the lie that passeth through the mind, but the lie that sinketh in and settleth in it, that doth the hurt, such as we spake of before. But howsoever these things are thus in men's depraved judgments and affections, yet truth, which only doth judge itself, teacheth that the inquiry of truth, which is the love-making or wooing of it, the knowledge of truth, which is the presence of it, and the belief of truth, which is the enjoying of it, is the sovereign good of human nature. The first creature of God in the works of the days was the light of the sense. The last was the light of reason, and his Sabbath work ever since is the illumination of his spirit. First he breathed light upon the face of the matter or chaos, then he breathed light into the face of man, and still he breatheth and inspireth light into the face of his chosen. The poet that beautified the sect that was otherwise inferior to the rest saith yet excellently well, "It is a pleasure to stand upon the shore, and to see ships tossed upon the sea, a pleasure to stand in the window of a castle, and to see a battle and the adventures thereof below. But no pleasure is comparable to the standing upon the vantage ground of truth, a hill not to be commanded, and where the air is always clear and serene, and to see the errors and wanderings and mists and tempests in the vale below. so always that this prospect be with pity and not with swelling or pride. Certainly it is heaven upon earth to have a man's mind move in charity, rest in providence, and turn upon the poles of truth.
Cast thy bread upon the waters, for thou shalt find it after many days. Give a portion to 7 and also to 8, for thou knowest not what evil shall be upon the earth. If the clouds be full of rain, they empty themselves upon the earth. And if the tree fall toward the south or toward the north, in the place where the tree falleth, there it shall be. He that observeth the wind shall not sow, and he that regardeth the clouds shall not reap. As thou knowest not what is the way of the Spirit, nor how the bones do grow in the womb of her that is with child, even so thou knowest not the works of God, who maketh all. In the morning sow thy seed, and in the evening withhold not thine hand. For thou knowest not whether shall prosper either this or that, or whether they both shall be alike good. Truly the light is sweet, and a pleasant thing it is for the eyes to behold the sun. But if a man live many years, and rejoice in them all, yet let him remember the days of darkness, for they shall be many. All that cometh is vanity. Rejoice, O young man, in thy youth, and let thy heart cheer thee in the days of thy youth, and walk in the ways of thine heart, and in the sight of thine eyes. But know thou that for all these things God will bring thee into judgment. Therefore remove sorrow from thy heart, and put away evil from thy flesh, for childhood and youth are vanity. Remember now thy Creator in the days of thy youth, while the evil days come not, nor the years draw nigh when thou shalt say, I have no pleasure in them. While the sun, or the light, or the moon, or the stars be not darkened, nor the clouds return after the rain, in the day when the keepers of the house shall tremble, and the strong men shall bow themselves, and the grinders cease because they are few, and those that look out of the windows be darkened, and the doors shall be shut in the streets, when the sound of the grinding is low. And he shall rise up at the voice of the bird, and all the daughters of music shall be brought low. Also when they shall be afraid of that which is high, and fears shall be in the way, and the almond tree shall flourish, and the grasshopper shall be a burden, and desire shall fail, because man goeth to his long home, and the mourners go about the streets. Or ever the silver cord be loosed, or the golden bowl be broken, or the pitcher be broken at the fountain, or the wheel broken at the cistern. Then shall the dust return to the earth as it was, and the spirit shall return unto God who gave it.
What an unmatchable torment were it for a man to be barred up every night in a vast, silent charnel house, hung to make it more hideous with lamps dimly and slowly burning in hollow and glimmering corners, where all the pavement should, instead of green rushes, be strewed with blasted rosemary, withered hyacinths, fatal cypress and yew, thickly mingled with heaps of dead men's bones. The bare ribs of a father that begat him lying there, here the chapless hollow skull of a mother that bore him. Round about him 1,000 corpses, some standing bolt upright in their knotted winding sheets, others half mouldered in rotten coffins that should suddenly yawn wide open, filling his nostrils with noisome stench, and his eyes with the sight of nothing but crawling worms. And to keep such a poor wretch waking, he should hear no noise but of toads croaking, screech owls howling, mandrakes shrieking. Were not this an infernal prison? Would not the strongest-hearted man, beset with such a ghastly horror, look wild, and run mad, and die? And even such a formidable shape did the diseased city appear in. For he that durst in the dead hour of gloomy midnight have been so valiant as to have walked through the still and melancholy streets, what think you should have been his music? Surely the loud groans of raving sick men, the struggling pangs of souls departing, in every house grief striking up an alarm, servants crying out for masters, wives for husbands, parents for children, children for their mothers. Here he should have met some frantically running to knock up sextons, there others fearfully sweating with coffins to steal forth dead bodies, lest the fatal handwriting of death should seal up their doors. And to make this dismal consort more full, round about him bells heavily tolling in one place and ringing out in another. The dreadfulness of such an hour is unutterable. Let us go further. If some poor man, suddenly starting out of a sweet and golden slumber, should behold his house flaming about his ears, all his family destroyed in their sleeps by the merciless fire, himself in the very midst of it, woefully and like a madman calling for help, would not the misery of such a distressed soul appear the greater, if the rich usurer, dwelling next door to him, should not stir, though he felt part of the danger, but suffer him to perish, when the thrusting out of an arm might have saved him? How many thousands of wretched people have acted this poor man's part? How often hath the amazed husband, waking, found the comfort of his bed lying breathless by his side, his children at the same instant gasping for life, and his servants mortally wounded at the heart by sickness. The distracted creature beats at death doors, exclaims at windows, his cries are sharp enough to pierce heaven. But on earth no ear is opened to receive them.
Let me wither and wear out mine age, in a discomfortable, in an unwholesome, in a penurious prison, and so pay my debts with my bones, and recompense the wastefulness of my youth with the beggary of mine age. Let me wither in a spittle under sharp and foul and infamous diseases, and so recompense the wantonness of my youth with that loathsomeness in mine age. Yet if God withdraw not his spiritual blessings, his grace, his patience, if I can call my suffering his doing, my passion his action, all this that is temporal is but a caterpillar got into one corner of my garden, but a mildew fallen upon 1 acre of my corn. The body of all, the substance of all is safe, as long as the soul is safe. But when I shall trust to that which we call a good spirit, and God shall deject and impoverish and evacuate that spirit, when I shall rely upon a moral constancy, and God shall shake and enfeeble and enervate, destroy and demolish that constancy, when I shall think to refresh myself in the serenity and sweet air of a good conscience, and God shall call up the damps and vapours of hell itself, and spread a cloud of diffidence and an impenetrable crust of desperation upon my conscience, when health shall fly from me, and I shall lay hold upon riches to succour me and comfort me in my sickness, and riches shall fly from me, and I shall snatch after favour and good opinion to comfort me in my poverty, when even this good opinion shall leave me, and calumnies and misinformation shall prevail against me, when I shall need peace, because there is none but thou, O Lord, that should stand for me, and then shall find that all the wounds that I have come from thy hand, all the arrows that stick in me from thy quiver, when I shall see that because I have given myself to my corrupt nature, thou hast changed thine, and because I am all evil towards thee, therefore thou hast given over being good towards me. When it comes to this height, that the fever is not in the humours, but in the spirits, that mine enemy is not an imaginary enemy, fortune, not a transitory enemy, malice in great persons, but a real and an irresistible and an inexorable and an everlasting enemy, the Lord of hosts himself, the Almighty God himself. The Almighty God himself only knows the weight of this affliction, and except he put in that pondus glory, the exceeding weight of an eternal glory with his own hand into the other scale, we are weighed down, we are swallowed up, irreparably, irrevocably, irrecoverably, irremediably.